Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar, U.S.-Japan Partnership, Present and Future Bilateral Cooperation on Space, presented by Japan-U.S. Los Angeles, Consulate General of Japan in Los Angeles, and Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL. My name is Yuko Kaisu, and I'm the president of Japan-U.S. Los Angeles. Today, we'll be hearing views from top government and private sector leaders on how Japan and the United States can work together in venturing into space, which is a vast final frontier of human exploration and commercial activities. There have been some exciting news in the field in recent months. Hanabusa 2, which is asteroid sample return mission, successfully returned samples from asteroid Ryugu in December 2020. Japanese astronaut Akihiko Hoshide joined international crew for his mission at International Space Station. Mr. Richard Branson and Mr. Jeff Bezos went to space and returned successfully this past July, which made a lot of news. The Artemis lunar exploration program by NASA has been well underway, and JAXA has been collaborating with NASA as its international partner. But the space collaboration and cooperation between our two countries dates back a long time ago. In 1969, Japan and the United States signed the first agreement on space technology cooperation. Over the decades since then, Japan has developed a unique, successful, and competitive portfolio of space activities, and the country has become a critically important collaborator in the aerospace sector with the United States and other global partners. At the same time, the commercialization of space and expansion of public-private partnerships are also supporting and even sometimes accelerating renewed commitment to research and development by our national space agencies, JAXA and NASA. In light of this movement, during the 7th meeting of the Japan-U.S. Comprehensive Dialogue on Space in 2020, both countries renewed their strong determination to expand bilateral cooperation in a variety of areas, including space security, international rulemaking, space situation awareness, space exploration, commercial space activities, and global navigation satellite systems. Today, we have 4 industry experts who'll be updating us on their projects and efforts and sharing their perspectives. I'm looking forward to learning from their presentation. Now I'd like to go over a few housekeeping notes. Please turn your attention to the screen. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Japan House website in near future. The audience is muted and the chat and video are turned off. If you have questions, please use the Q&A bar at the bottom of your screen to send in questions anytime during the program. We'll try to cover as many questions as possible as the time allows. Before we start the program, we will now show you a video message from Consul General Akira Muto of Japan.
Thank you for inviting me to join you with this message today, as we explore the very important and growing relationship between Japan and the United States in the space. First, I would like to offer my condolences for many losses and injuries, including that of the U.S. service members, caused by the terror attack that happened near Kabul International Airport in Afghanistan. The governments of Japan and the United States are committed to expanding bilateral cooperation in a variety of areas, including the International Space Station Program, space security, international rulemaking, space situational awareness, space exploration, Earth observation, commercial space activities. For instance, in December last year, Japan and the United States exchanged notes concerning cooperation on hosted payloads as a space security cooperation. In addition, we also hope that competitiveness and resilience partnership launched by both leaders in April will further promote civil space cooperation, including the Artemis program. Over the last 5 decades, Japan has developed a unique and successful portfolio of technologies, including launch vehicles, satellites, and interplanetary exploration craft, and has had some rather inspiring successes, such as Hayabusa 2, which extracted samples from asteroids and returned it to Earth in one round-trip mission of some 3.25 billion miles, and Japanese companies are already very much a part of the global aerospace value chain, supplying technologies to companies all over the world, including those with large Southern California operations like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and SpaceX. And while entrepreneurs in Mojave Desert are pushing forward with the commercialization of space, Japan has also fostered new waves of dozens of startups determined to enter the private space race as well. The opportunities for greater collaboration between Japan and the United States are boundless. I look forward to hearing today's very informed discussion and to more Japan-U.S. partnership in space, commencing here in Southern California and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Consul General Muto. Now I'd like to invite to the screen our first speaker, General Larry James, Interim Center Director of JPL. JPL is NASA's leading center for the robotic exploration of the solar system. General James was appointed Interim Director of the JPL this August after having served as the Deputy Center Director since 2013. He is the laboratory's Chief Executive Officer responsible for the day-to-day management of JPL's activities, which includes various NASA programs for solar system exploration, Mars, astronomy, physics, earth science, and interplanetary network. Before joining JPL, he was the Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance at the Pentagon. And I just recently learned that he lived in Japan for 2 years. Before the presentation of General James, we will show you a short video about NASA-JAXA collaboration.
Well, konnichiwa and ohayo gozaimasu, depending on where you live. And thank you to Yuko and Japan-U.S. Arigatou gozaimasu for sponsoring this event today. I'm very excited to be here to talk a bit about the partnership that the Jet Propulsion Lab and NASA have had with the Japanese space program and JAXA over many years. So thank you for the great opportunity to do that. So let me just get a little bit into our discussion today. First, a brief background about JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab. We are NASA's research center, federally funded research center. We are operated by the California Institute of Technology, Caltech, in order to do fundamental research for NASA, especially focused on the robotic exploration of space. We're in Pasadena, California, and of course have close ties to the Japanese community here, as well as the JAXA organization in Japan. Really, our fundamental mission here at JPL is robotic space exploration. We started really back in the 1930s with developing rockets, determining how to do that as a part of Caltech. And then we built and launched America's first satellite in January of 1958. And after that, NASA was created and asked the Jet Propulsion Lab to become their research center. So since 1958, we have been NASA's research center under contract to NASA to do these types of exploration. Going to Mars, as you have seen recently this year with our Perseverance rover and our Ingenuity helicopter, exploring every planet in the solar system. We have visited every planet in the solar system. Looking out beyond our solar system to those planets around other stars, which is a totally new field of astrophysics. And also looking out at the universe come about. How is it created? What is dark energy? What is dark matter? These are all questions that our telescopes and our missions seek to answer. We also look back at our Earth. Earth is an extremely important part of what we do. You can see as evidence there on the lower right, some of the data that we take from our Earth orbiting satellites. And finally, there in the middle, we operate the interplanetary network, which allows us to communicate with our missions throughout the solar system. So that is a little bit about who we are and what our focus is day in and day out. And so, as I said, Earth science is often the largest component of our budget. It's a very important part of what we do. We have several hundred Earth scientists who work at JPL who really try to understand what's going on with our planet, our atmosphere, our carbon cycle, our water cycle, all these various things. So, but we've had a long partnership with JAXA and the Japanese Space Agency. And this just kind of highlights some of those missions that we've had in the past. The NASA Scatterometer satellite, or INSCAT, or payload, which is hosted on a Japanese satellite. We operated that, launched it in 1996 and through 1997. Scatterometers measure ocean currents or ocean winds, primarily ocean winds, just to try to understand what's going on across the broad ocean so the scientists can better model the impacts of ocean currents and ocean winds on our climate. QuickScat was a follow-on to INSCAT, again, a scatterometer as the primary instrument looking down at the oceans. And finally, IDEOS-2, which we flew several instruments on with JAXA, with a variety of instruments, primarily scatterometers, again, looking and measuring activity on the ocean. So you can see that we've had a fairly long history from the mid-90s with Japan and the space work that is going on there. And in fact, QuickScat had a very long life, really just had end of mission about 3 years ago. So provided an incredible amount of data for our climate measurements and our weather scientists to really understand and better understand our Earth environment. So an extremely important part of what we do, and that really has continued into the near term. And I highlight these two missions that we're currently flying on the International Space Station because we're using the JEM module, the Japanese experiment module there on the space station that hosts an incredible amount of instrument capability. And for us, two of those key missions are eco-stress, ecological stress, if you will. This is an instrument that looks down on the Earth and essentially understands the health of plants. And we do this by essentially measuring the temperature of the plants, because a healthy plant is absorbing water, and that water is evaporating from the plant. And as it evaporates, it cools the plant. So if we measure cool temperatures in the biomass, that means generally that area is healthy. If the temperatures are warmer, that means that the plant is suffering from lack of water, from drought, it's unhealthy. So we can really start to map the health of the biology around our globe. So very important instrument that we've been flying since 2018 on the JEM module on the ISS. Next instrument is our Orbiting Carbon Observatory 3. This complements Orbiting Carbon Observatory 2, which is a free-flying satellite that operates in polar orbit. So we fly over the poles with that particular spacecraft, but we kind of get the same time view every day. Whereas when we use the instrument on the International Space Station, we're getting a variety of different times when we're looking at carbon dioxide absorption and carbon dioxide production. So this allows us to really start to build that map and understand where carbon dioxide is being created and how is it being absorbed. And of course, this is a very important input into the climate models, with carbon dioxide being a key component of potentially global warming and those sorts of things. So the opportunity to fly both of these instruments on the JEM module at the International Space Station has just been a tremendous partnership and a tremendous capability, certainly for NASA and for JPL. We also have another instrument that is going to be attached to the JEM module called EMIT. This instrument is the long title is Earth Surface Mineral Dust Source Investigation. Of course, we always have to shorten that. But essentially what this instrument will be doing is measuring the dust that flows off of Saharan Africa and gradually makes its way across the Atlantic Ocean and influences the southern and northern hemisphere, South and North America. And that also plays a pretty important role in climate, because when there's dust, there's cooling underneath it. So understanding the quantity of that dust, understanding the component of that dust, really will help us better model and better understand how that influences the climate across the African area as well as into the Western Hemisphere. So this is a mission that we're building right now. It will launch next year up to the JEM module at the space station. So we'll really have incredible instruments operating in partnership with Japan from our capability on the International Space Station. So we'll move from Earth science to looking out well beyond the Earth, astrophysics. I touched on this briefly in my opening remarks, but the Roman Space Telescope is the latest telescope that we are designing and building. It's actually, the telescope itself is managed by the Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, but JPL is building a very important component of that called a coronagraph. And a coronagraph is an instrument that will sit inside the telescope and will allow us to block the light from a star so that we can try to image the very dim light of any planets around that star. So it's a very, very precise instrument. Japan has contributed some of the capability that goes into that instrument. And as well, Japan, your National Astronomical Observatory of Japan has dedicated 100 nights of observation so that as this telescope, once it is launched in 2026, it will be observing the same area that the telescope in space is observing. So we get these complementary instruments that can then start to really narrow down all the information we're getting, help us understand it, and so on. So not only did you contribute some of the key components of the instrument, but you'll be contributing some of the observation time on your key telescope that will really improve our capability to understand the measurements that we are getting. So we're very excited about this mission. It's potentially the first time that we can really take very good imagery of planets around other stars. And when you can take that imagery and get that light, you can start to then break it into its spectral components and start to understand perhaps what are the components of an atmosphere of a planet around another star. So extremely exciting for the scientists to really understand those planets around other stars. This is our deep space network. I touched on that in my opening slide, but these are absolutely critical to obtaining the data from all these missions that are operating around the solar system. It's an international capability. We have sites in California, in Canberra, Australia, and in Madrid, Spain. There's also cross-support agreements that we have with JAXA. Your antenna, your 54-meter antenna allows us to get data from that antenna into the DSN, the Deep Space Network Complex. And we also provide support to many of the missions that go out beyond the moon and out into the solar system. For example, various deep space missions like Hayabusa 2 utilize the Deep Space Network to provide telemetry data, navigation data, and those sorts of things. And of course, as we move into the Orion regime with manned missions back to the moon, the JAXA antennas will also help to support those missions as well. So really a long running partnership with the ability to track and communicate and bring back telemetry between our systems. So that's been a very important and successful partnership. We look to the future, of course, I think there's a variety of opportunities for our partnership. There's many planetary science missions that will be coming out over the next 5 or 8 years for competition. And whether it's to the inner planets, to the asteroids, to the comets, to the outer planets, we expect in one form or fashion, there will be missions focused in these particular areas over the next decade. And certainly, given our past partnership and past capabilities working together, we see each of these areas as a potential for future partnership opportunities, whether it's payloads or instruments or spacecraft. So an exciting time ahead in planetary science. We are awaiting what we call the Planetary Science Decadal Survey, which is our every 10 years review of what's important and what are the key missions that we should go after from a NASA perspective. And so once that comes out, then we'll have a much more refined focus on what are the missions that we are going to want to develop and what are the partnership opportunities that we may have together. And just building on the Roman Space Telescope that I talked about earlier, we're also awaiting the next decadal survey for astrophysics. And in that, we expect to get information and guidance on what are the key telescope developments that we want to do over the next decade. One of these that we have done a concept design for NASA is called HABEX, which is really going to the next level of capability and next generation of technology to what we're trying to do with the Nancy Roman telescope, but really focused on entirely trying to image very precisely those planets around other stars and search for signatures of habitability. So this could be a very exciting mission, again, with potential partnership opportunities. And again, we have to wait for the decadal survey to understand the priority that a mission like this would have. and really my last informational slide, but we're pretty busy at JPL and at NASA, but these are upcoming JPL missions. COVAR is another wind vector radiometer that will be flying on the space station, launching in December. I won't go through all of these, but both SWAT, Maya, EMIT, and PRE-FIRE are all Earth science instruments, Earth missions that are looking back at the Earth. Psyche is a mission going out to the fourth largest asteroid called Psyche. And then if you look down at the bottom, NISAR, another Earth observing satellite, a partnership with India. Carbon Plume Mapper, CPM, as its name suggests, it's an instrument that's going to fly on a planet spacecraft that planet's going to provide, and we're going to provide the instrument to look for carbon and methane plumes. And this is a unique mission for us because it's actually a nonprofit organization that's sponsoring this. So pretty busy time coming up in 2022 and 2023. And we're excited about all the opportunities for doing science, not only for NASA, but for the world. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about what we're doing. And I look forward to your questions and as well look forward to future opportunities for partnership. So, arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you, General James, so much. We learned so much about the depth and width and breadth of bilateral cooperation between Japan and the United States, particularly between NASA, JPL, and JAXA. So thank you for compressing the huge presentations to 5 minutes or so. So I'm sure that we have more questions coming forth later. Now, I would like to ask Mr. Eisuke Tanabe, Director of Strategic Planning Division of the Ministry of Defense of Japan. Since 1997, Mr. Tanabe served in various positions in the Ministry of Defense, as well as the Cabinet Secretariat, with a focus on Japan-U.S. defense cooperation. He received bachelor's degree in law from the University of Tokyo and master's degree in law and diplomacy from the Fletcher School at Tufts University. Most recently, he was a member of the Royal College of Defense Studies of the United Kingdom. He's truly global. So, Mr. Tanabe, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Tanabe Eisuke, and I'm Director of Strategic Planning Division at Japanese Ministry of Defense. I'm honored to join you today at this webinar. Today, I'm going to brief you about Japan's efforts in the space domain and also Japan-U.S. cooperation and etc., mainly from the military perspective. This summer, as Ms. Kaifu explained at the beginning, we saw two billionaires, entrepreneurs, Sir Richard Branson and Mr. Jeff Bezos, open the era of commercial space travel. We also expect that by the end of this year, SpaceX, led by Mr. Elon Musk, will start providing global internet service by its colossal microsatellite constellation, Starlink. We are also surrounded by much more familiar satellites for meteorological, communication, and GPS purposes. In the contemporary life, space use has spread into every activity. In the security sector, militaries of major countries deploy reconnaissance, communication, and positioning satellites in outer space and interweave these functions into operations in the terrestrial domain. It is no exaggeration to say that military operations cannot be planned or executed in isolation from space assets. Against this backdrop, we are paying close attention towards emerging threats to our space-based systems. China and Russia are said to be developing killer satellites, which can approach and attack other countries' satellites, and such anti-satellite weapons would pose a grave threat to the stable use of military and civil assets in outer space. Facing such a new challenge, the Japanese Ministry of Defense has started building its space situational awareness systems, which will allow us to track space debris and also suspicious satellites. JMOD will commence operations of our ground-based radar system within 2 years. And in 5 years, we are scheduled to launch an SSA satellite into geostationary orbit to conduct space-based surveillance. In order to sustain the above-mentioned SSA systems, last year we established the Space Operations Squadron in our Air Self-Defense Force. And next year, we intend to expand it to a Space Operations Group. hereby strengthening capabilities of our space unit. In the field of SSA, the US military is several steps ahead of us. The JMOD SDF would like to cooperate with the US Space Force and Space Command, such as information sharing for SSA and personnel exchanges. Secondly, in recent years, new weapon systems, namely hypersonic glide vehicle or HGV, have attracted great deal of attention. HGVs, developed by China and Russia, fly at low altitudes, high velocity, and in irregular trajectory, and are assessed to be very difficult to counter. In order for Japan to respond to the new threats, we must consider and study a new way of detecting and tracking such missiles. And one possibility is space-based sensors mounted in multiple satellites in an array. Such an approach is often called satellite constellation, and the US, our ally, has already started its own program, which is called the National Defense Space Architecture. We would like to discuss with US counterparts on this issue, having in mind a possible collaboration between the two countries. As I just described, the JMOD places great importance in our cooperation with the US Department of Defense. Regarding space cooperation between our military services, so far we have sent liaison officer to the US Space Command and have taken part in tabletop-style exercises hosted by the US. We will continue to discuss future cooperation in the space field with our American counterparts in DoD. Today, both economic and social needs of our society are pressing space utilization to expand drastically. And this follows that the free and stable use of the space domain becomes even more crucial. The JMOD will continue to invest in the space domain and will collaborate with our ally and like-minded nations to contribute towards the free and stable use of outer space. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Tanabe, we see that the space is not without challenges or security threats, so it has to be defended. It has to be efforts to keep the space the peaceful place to be. So I thank you for sharing your assessment. Our next speaker is Mr. Kazutsuna Hebeishi. Mr. Hebeishi is currently the head of the Satellite System Development Department of the Space Systems Division at NEC Corporation, which is one of the leading companies in Japan's space industry. He has wide experience in the commercial launch business, satellite communications, engineering, and development, marketing, and sales promotion of remote sensing satellites. Mr. Hebeishi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, and good morning from Japan. So my name is Hebeishi from NEC Space System Division, and I've been engaged in space development and the space business in Japan for over 25 years. So I'm honored today to have such a wonderful opportunity to make a presentation of our NEC Corporation, a long-established ICT company, which has specialized in computing and communication since it was established in 1899. And today, I would like to introduce our business first in general, and followed by space business. And we had ongoing project with the prospects for the future. So now, digital transformation is expanding beyond the borders of the industry and the nations, and creating new barriers which connect all people, things, and the context. And that places greater importance on networks and artificial intelligence, AI, including the biometric authentication. So in recent years, NEC has taken advantage of the biometrics technologies and AI technologies as its core. And we have achieved the world's highest accuracy with the face recognition, iris recognition, and the fingerprint recognition using our original platform. And we are providing a wide variety of solutions using such cutting-edge technologies. So let me give you some examples. The first example is the solution at the bottom of the sea. So NEC has laid the vast length of the submarine cable, and which is equivalent to 7 labs around the world. Another example is the solution in space. So we have been involved in Japan's space development for a long time, and including the development of Hayabusa 2 asteroid explorer mission, which returned to Earth successfully at the end of last year.
NEC Space Solutions. NEC began challenging the frontiers of space with the first Japanese satellite. Over 40 years, 70 satellites developed. Over 200 satellites, 7,000 components. In 2014, NEC begins the total integration and testing of satellites at its Fuchu plant. NEC's satellites gaze upon the Earth's present and future from space.
Thank you for watching video. So NEC space business has a long history of 65 years, and product we have provided so far is diverse, from satellite system for various missions to the component on board the space system, and as well as a wide variety of ground systems. And even though our main customers are Japanese government and the JAXA, our component has been also introduced into the commercial market. So they are adopted in a lot of commercial communication satellites. As long as the United States-Japan collaboration is concerned, so NEC has already participated in the first US-Japan collaborative project in space. Let me give you some example. On the left side, NEC provided the dual frequency precipitation radar for GPS mission, which is a joint project between United States and Japan. In the construction of the International Space Station, NEC provided the laboratory on board Japanese experiment module. And as for QZSS, Japanese satellite positioning system, which transmits signals fully compatible with United States GPS, NEC was in charge of the total system and navigation payload. And right side show the business-to-business collaboration. So as I said, we have provided provided a wide variety of components to the United States satellite system manufacturer and vice versa. So we are purchasing the component and the parts from the United States company. And after all, so we have the future ongoing collaboration project at the private level. And NEC AI software has been adapted for the purpose of improving efficiency in the development and operation of Orion, promoted by Lockheed Martin of the United States. And currently, we are analyzing the space application method on it. And in the future, so we NEC would like to move our space business forward with the aim of expanding US-Japan collaboration toward the new field. I'm looking for such an opportunity, the future collaboration project. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hebeishi. It's great to know that NEC has gone into this field 40 years ago in early as 1970s, and now biometric and AI technologies have been applied to space technologies. Great thing to know. Thank you. Last but not least, I would like to invite to the screen Mr. Takeshi Hakamada, founder and CEO of iSpace Inc. iSpace is a Japanese startup company that is leading multinational commercial lunar exploration program known as Hakuto-R. And in 2020, they expanded their business to Denver, Colorado. Mr. Hakamada is guiding iSpace to continuously challenge itself to enable humans to establish a sustainable ecosystem between the Earth and the Moon by unlocking the utilization of space resources. iSpace just recently unveiled the next generation lunar lander for its third lunar mission targeting a 2024 launch. So without further ado, Mr. Hakamada, please take it away.
Thank you very much introduction, and then thank you for having me today. My name is Takeshi Hakamada, founder and CEO of iSpace. I'd like to introduce iSpace. Before that, introduce myself a little bit. I studied aerospace engineering in Georgia Tech in the United States. And then I started this business 10 years ago because I encountered the first commercial or private airport space flight by the Space One, which is predecessor of the Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic. And then I feel a lot of opportunity in this commercial space industry. And then company Snapshot, as I said, founded about 10 years ago, this company. And then now we have over 150 employees globally, where we are developing technology, so most of them are engineers. We are located in Tokyo, headquarters, and then we have about 100 in Tokyo. And then we have also US office as introduced in Colorado, 20 people, and then Luxembourg in Europe as well, about 20. Even though we are based in Tokyo, we are very global international company already. And then almost half of our employees are non-Japanese. Recently, so far, we raised about $200 million from the mainly Japanese investors, including government-related investors like INCJ or DBJ, Development Bank of Japan. And also already we have a collaborator in United States in industry level. We are working closely with General Atomics and the Draper Laboratory in Massachusetts. Regarding where US office, we locate in Denver. We opened this office 1 year ago. Now we have over 20 employees coming from SpaceX, Boeing, many of the US space industry. And we are developing next generation lander called Series 2. Our vision is expand the planet, expand the future, which means we want to extend our human presence into outer space by making the Earth Moon one ecosystem and then creating new economy on the moon. With this will be essentially leads to the security of the sustainability of the life on the Earth as well. And then in order to realize this vision, we have a concept called Moon Valley 2040. We believe that around 2040, we will have more than 1,000 people living and working on the lunar surface, and then also more than 10,000 people traveling between the Earth and the Moon by utilizing resources on the lunar surface, especially water resources. And then because we are a commercial company, we are going to do business. We have currently 3 types of business model. The first is lunar transportation. We're gonna deliver customers' payload to the lunar surface. And then also we are doing partnership program, leverage advertisement value by doing our missions. And then also technical or business collaboration with partners. And then also we are going to provide lunar data. The data is key to do everything on the lunar surface. So we're going to gather as much as data in advance and then provide data set to the customers. In order to do business, we have already planned a series of the missions in the future. We currently announced 2 missions as a hack to our mission 1, mission 2 as a technology demonstration. And then mission 3 is supposed to be launched 24. And then after that, we're going to provide 2 missions per year basis. Regarding first mission under the Hack to Our program, we are going to launch next year by the SpaceX Falcon 9. We are already have payload customers, including JAXA and then also UAE space agencies, Canadian Space Agency as well, and the commercial payload as well. And then also we have a partnership program, and then 8 companies are currently joined this Hack to Our programs. And then because we are going to launch next year, our hardware development already almost to the end. This is the one shot from the STM structure thermal model summer vacuum testing recently conducted in the JAXA's Tsukuba facility. And then we've already started flight model assembly in Germany with support from the Ariane group. We're plan to finish assembly this year and then going to the final system test early next year. Last month, we announced next generation lander, Series 2. Our first second missions, we can carry up to 30 kilogram payload as design. However, this lander gonna be larger. In the design mass, we're gonna deliver maximum 500 kilograms payload to the lunar surface. And then this will provide more flexibility for the customers. Any types of the payload can be carried on the lunar surface. And then this is developed in United States. And then our current first target is to provide service for NASA under the NASA's Commercial Lunar Payload Service Program called CLIPS. We are part of the Team Draper laboratory to provide this service through the CLIPS program, and then looking forward to more collaboration with the United States. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hakamada, so much. It's encouraging to know that iSpace, which is a startup company, has been growing so fast and under your leadership and the vision and technology. And we keep our eyes on how your company would grow further in the future. So thank you. So we heard all the four speakers speak about their areas of activities and updates. And now I'd like to take a few questions, if I may. So the first question, I guess it's probably addressed to General James. Low Earth orbit and above is full of space junk that prevents very real threats to current and future unmanned and manned space missions. Are any projects underway or proposals under consideration to address the problem? And then I also received another question regarding the space debris. How is JAXA and NASA working together to reduce space debris so that it doesn't become the next climate change issue humanity creates? So perhaps General James or any other speakers can answer that question.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think all spacefaring nations recognize that this is a challenge that we face and something that we have to manage carefully. Several years ago, there was essentially a policy that organizations signed up to that said, if you launch a satellite, it will have the ability to essentially either deorbit or get out of low Earth orbit so that we're not adding to the congestion. There's also been some recent experiments, for example, on small sats or CubeSats with long tethers that eventually bring you into the atmosphere very quickly after your mission is over. So there's a lot of work going on, number one, to have the policies that limit the debris in low Earth orbit. Number two, provide ways to deorbit spacecraft when they're dead. And then there's also people looking at how do I go and just all this debris that's already there that's non-functioning, how do I capture it and bring it back? So it's a long-term work in progress, but I think we're all working toward the same objectives.
Thank you. So let me move on to the next question. I guess that it's to Mr. Tanabe. Lots of companies are making small satellites and there are new launch services like Blue Origin and SpaceX. How will the military use this technology to increase global security?
Thank you for the great question. I really appreciate recent innovations brought by so-called new space companies. I think these technologies, as you mentioned, inexpensive small satellites or reduced cost of launch will benefit our posture in terms of military resiliency. For example, if you get new layers of satellite communications provided by a satellite constellation, that will increase our resiliency in terms of communications with our aircraft and ships. So such kind of technology we will utilize to the maximum extent.
Thank you, Mr. Tanabe. The next question, I probably should address it to Mr. Hebishi. What are the major innovations in the space sector you see in the coming decade, and how will they enhance cooperative programs? You've already talked about AI and biometric technology, but if you can specifically answer this question.
Okay, so I'm excited about the satellite constellation, as Tanabe-san mentioned, because this can eliminate disadvantage of the conventional space systems like low temporal resolution and larger size user terminal, such kind of disadvantage it can eliminate. So after they are resolved, the utilization of space, so will be widely incorporated in people's lives around the world. So then now we are discussing, and we had started with some consideration. So yes, expected for the future coming decade prospect.
Thank you. The next one, of course, it's got to be Mr. Hakamada. do you have any message to young people, including students, who might want to be part of the space industry in the future?
Thank you for the question. Well, we envision very long-term visions, sustainable human presence in space and then on Earth as well. And then I believe that currently space industry is very limited access to the people. However, in the next 1 decade, 2 decades, the access to this space is going to be more broad. And in any kind of the profession can be involved. Imagine that if the human beings start living in space, everything to support human life should be required. And then any types of the service, hardware or software or anything. So there's a many place entrance you can join in this space. So please consider to create your strengths in any types of the field. And then that leads to this space.
Thank you for the very encouraging message to young people. So we only have a few more minutes, and I'd like to each one of you to say a few words about how you envision about the space, how it will look 10, 20 years from now, 30 seconds each. Can I start with General James?
Certainly, Yuko. Quickly, I mean, I think as all of us said, it's a very exciting time to be in space. There will be a lot of new capability, a lot of new opportunities for people to participate in space exploration, and a lot of new technologies that will allow us to go further and further out, either living as humans or exploring with robotic spacecraft. And through all of that, partnerships will be absolutely essential to make sure that we can all work together to do this incredible exploration.
Thank you. Mr. Tanabe?
From my perspective, the coming decades will be more and more difficult in terms of my job. So to compete with any adversaries surrounding Japan, I would say the Japan-U.S. defense cooperation would be the key for us to stay a prosperous nation. I would like to continue our efforts in cooperation with the United States.
Thank you. Well said. Mr. Hebishi?
So as I said, the space system will be space infrastructure in the future. So than ever. So it is kind of the indispensable system for all the people. So we need to discuss about what to do with the burden or such a thing. So from such a perspective, the necessity of collaboration between United States, Japan, including the government and the private sector will be including, and we'd like to participate in such a discussion.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Hakamada?
Well, our vision is Moon by 2040. That is our vision. And I like to make this space the place to earn money, not lose money. And essential objective is to protect the life on the Earth.
Thank you. That would be great. And I'd like to be one of the travelers to the space, to the moon. So I'm sorry to the audience that I have not been able to cover all the questions that have been presented, but wish really to thank all the speakers. It's been very inspirational, very educational, and forward-looking. So thank you so very much. So the audience, when you exit the program, you will be redirected to our survey page. Please take a moment to fill it out so that we can continue providing high-quality content that is relevant to your interests. Please also follow us on social media platform at japanhousela.com to stay up to date on our events and programs. Thank you so much again, and I hope to see you again soon.